I found out I was homeless on a Tuesday afternoon while buying groceries, standing in the produce section of Miller's Market, squeezing avocados and trying to remember if I needed cilantro when my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize, but something made me answer. Mrs. Patricia Morrison? A woman's voice, professional and slightly apologetic. Yes? This is Jennifer Chen from Riverside Title Company. I'm calling about the closing scheduled for Friday. We haven't received your signed disclosure documents yet, and we'll need those at least 48 hours before the sale finalizes. I set down the avocado carefully, my hands suddenly unsteady. I'm sorry, what closing? The sale of your property at 847 Maple Street. The closing is scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. Your son arranged everything, but we do need your signature on... My son did what? There was a pause. Papers rustling. I'm looking at the paperwork now. Andrew Morrison, listed as your power of attorney, initiated the sale 6 weeks ago. The buyers are very excited. They're a young family, paying cash, and Mrs. Morrison, are you still there? I was still there, standing in the middle of the grocery store, my cart half full, my mind completely empty. Andrew had sold my house. My house. The home I'd lived in for 37 years, where I'd raised him and his sister, where my husband died 5 years ago, where every room held memories I wasn't ready to pack away. And he'd done it without telling me. There must be a mistake, I said, my voice sounding far away even to my own ears. I never agreed to sell my home. Oh, the woman's tone shifted immediately. Oh no. Mrs. Morrison, do you have power of attorney documents on file with anyone? Yes, I gave Andrew power of attorney last year when I had surgery, just as a precaution in case something happened during the procedure. But I never told him he could sell my house. I see. More paper rustling. Mrs. Morrison, I think you need to call your son immediately, and possibly a lawyer, because according to these documents, the sale is legal and binding. The house will transfer ownership in 3 days. 3 days. I had 3 days before I lost my home. I abandoned my cart right there in the produce section and walked out to my car. Sat in the driver's seat with shaking hands, trying to process what I'd just heard. Andrew had sold my house without asking, without telling me, just sold it. I called him. It went straight to voicemail. Called again, voicemail. On the third attempt, he answered, his voice irritated. Mom, I'm in a meeting. Can this wait? Did you sell my house? Silence. Long enough that I knew the answer before he spoke. We need to talk about this in person. Can you come by my office after 5? Did you sell my house? Yes, but Mom, before you get upset, you need to understand. I hung up. Sat in that parking lot with the phone in my lap, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. My son, my oldest child, the boy I'd nursed through colds and driven to baseball practice and put through college, had sold my home out from under me like I was a piece of furniture he no longer needed. The rage came then. Not hot and explosive, but cold and calculating. The kind of anger that doesn't scream or throw things. The kind that plans. Andrew thought he could make decisions about my life without my input. Thought he could treat me like I was incompetent or invisible. Thought he could sell my home, and I'd just accept it because he knew best. He had no idea who he was dealing with. I'm 72 years old. I've buried a husband, raised 2 children, run a household, and survived more than my son could imagine. I'm not some helpless old woman who needs him to manage my life, and I was about to teach him a lesson he'd never forget. But I needed to be smart about it, strategic. Andrew was a lawyer, used to winning, used to being the smartest person in the room. If I was going to fight back, I needed to do it in a way he'd never see coming. I started the car and drove home. To my home, the one I still owned for 3 more days. And I began to plan. I bought the house on Maple Street in 1987 with my husband, Robert. We were 35 years old, had 2 kids under 5, and a mortgage that terrified us. But the moment I walked through that front door and saw the sunlight streaming through the bay windows, I knew we were home. It was a 2-story colonial with a wraparound porch, built in the 1920s, with all the character that comes from a house that's lived almost a century. Hardwood floors that creaked in the same spots every time, a kitchen that needed updating even when we bought it, a backyard with an old oak tree, perfect for a tire swing. We raised Andrew and his younger sister Michelle in that house, marked their heights on the door frame in the kitchen every birthday, patched holes in the walls from baseballs and teenage tantrums, painted bedrooms and refinished floors and fixed leaky faucets. The house grew with us, absorbed our lives into its walls until it was impossible to tell where the building ended and the family began. Robert died in the master bedroom 5 years ago. Lung cancer, even though he'd never smoked a day in his life. I held his hand while he took his last breath, the afternoon sun coming through those same bay windows that had sold me on the house 37 years earlier. After he died, everyone expected me to sell. The house was too big for one person, they said. Too much maintenance, too many memories. I should move into a condo, something easier, somewhere with less upkeep. I refused. This was my home. Robert was in every corner of it, every memory, every creaky floorboard. I wasn't ready to leave him behind. Besides, I was perfectly capable of managing on my own. At 67, I was healthy, active, independent. I had my garden club, my book group, my volunteer work at the library. I drove myself everywhere, paid my own bills, maintained the house with help from a handyman when needed. Andrew worried anyway. He always had been a worrier, even as a child. Responsible to a fault, the kind of kid who did his homework the day it was assigned and never missed a curfew. He became a corporate lawyer, married a woman named Vanessa who worked in finance, had 2 perfect children who attended private school. He visited every few weeks, always with the same concerned expression. "Mom, are you sure you're eating enough? You look thin. Mom, did you remember to get the furnace serviced? Mom, have you thought about what happens if you fall and no one's here?" I appreciated the concern, even when it felt suffocating. He loved me. I knew that. He just had a hard time seeing me as anything other than his mother, someone who needed protection, management, care. Michelle, my youngest, was different. She lived in Seattle with her wife and their adopted daughter, called every week, visited when she could, but she treated me like an adult capable of making my own decisions. When I said I was staying in the house, she said, "Good. It's your home. Stay as long as you want." Last year, I needed surgery. Nothing major, a hip replacement, fairly routine. But Andrew insisted I needed someone with power of attorney, just in case. What if something goes wrong during surgery? What if you're incapacitated? Someone needs to be able to make medical decisions. He made sense. I was going under general anesthesia, and complications were possible at my age. So I signed the papers his lawyer friend drew up, power of attorney for healthcare decisions and financial decisions too, because Andrew felt it made sense to bundle everything together. "I won't use it unless absolutely necessary," he promised. "This is just a safety net, Mom, for emergencies." I trusted him. He was my son. Why wouldn't I trust him? The surgery went fine. I recovered beautifully, was back to my normal routine within weeks. The power of attorney sat forgotten in a file somewhere. Or so I thought. What I didn't know was that Andrew had been having conversations with Vanessa, with his financial advisor, with Michelle even. Conversations about my future, my finances, my ability to live independently. The house is too much for her, he'd told Michelle over Christmas. I found this out later when Michelle called me, furious about what Andrew had done. She's 72. What if she falls down those stairs? What if she can't handle the yard work? What if the house becomes too much and she won't admit it? Michelle had shut him down. She's not incompetent, Andrew. She's just old. There's a difference. But Andrew couldn't see the difference. In his mind, being 72 meant I was one step away from needing full-time care. Never mind that I was healthier than most people 20 years younger. Never mind that I'd explicitly told him I wanted to stay in my home. He knew better. So, 6 weeks ago, without telling me, he had contacted a realtor, listed my house, accepted an offer, scheduled a closing. All perfectly legal because he had power of attorney. All completely devastating because it was my life he was selling without my permission. I sat in my living room that Tuesday evening after the phone call from the title company, looking around at everything I'd built here. The bookshelf Robert had made for our 10th anniversary, the piano where both kids had taken lessons, now dusty but still in tune, the photos on every surface, birthdays and graduations, and ordinary Tuesdays that became precious because they were ordinary. In 3 days, none of this would be mine anymore. I should have called a lawyer immediately, should have tried to stop the sale, fight the power of attorney, protect my home through legal means. But I knew Andrew. He'd have anticipated that. Probably had legal justifications ready, arguments about my best interests, maybe even a doctor's note suggesting I wasn't competent to live alone. He was thorough. He always had been. So I needed to be more thorough. I called Michelle first. She answered on the second ring, and I could hear my granddaughter singing in the background. "Mom, how are you?"
A pause. "Why? What did he do?" "He sold my house." "He what?" Her voice went from warm to ice in a second. "Please tell me you're joking." "I wish I was. The closing is Friday. A title company called me today asking for paperwork." "That absolute..." She stopped herself, probably because my granddaughter was nearby. "How is that even legal?" "Power of attorney. From my surgery." "But that was for medical emergencies." "Apparently, it covered financial decisions too. I didn't read the fine print carefully enough." Michelle swore, more creatively this time. Okay, we're gonna fix this. I'm calling my lawyer friend right now. We'll stop the sale, revoke his power of attorney, maybe get him disbarred while we're at it." "Michelle." "What?" "I don't want to stop the sale." Silence. "Mom, did you hit your head? He sold your house without permission. Your house, the one you've lived in for almost 40 years. "I know, and I'm furious. But I've been thinking about it all afternoon, and I have a better idea than fighting him in court." "What kind of idea?" "The kind where Andrew learns a very important lesson about underestimating his mother." I could hear the smile in Michelle's voice. "I'm listening." I told her my plan. It was risky, required perfect timing, and depended on Andrew being exactly as predictable as I knew he was. But if it worked, when it worked, he'd never make the mistake of treating me like an incompetent old woman again. "That's brilliant," Michelle said when I finished. "Absolutely brilliant. What do you need from me?" "Can you be here by Thursday night?" "I'll book a flight right now. Does Andrew know I'm coming?"
He doesn't know anything yet. I haven't talked to him since I found out about the sale. He's probably losing his mind. Good. Let him worry. Over the next 3 days, Andrew called 17 times, left 12 voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. Mom, please call me back. I can explain everything. This is for your own good. Mom, please, we need to talk about this. I'm worried about you. I didn't answer, didn't return his calls. Just let him sit with his worry while I put my plan into motion. I contacted the title company and confirmed all the details of the sale. Asked questions, took notes, was perfectly pleasant and cooperative. They seemed relieved that I wasn't fighting it, that I understood this was for the best. I started packing. Not everything, that would have been impossible in 3 days, but I carefully chose what mattered most. Photos, documents, Robert's favorite chair, my mother's china, the quilt my grandmother made, things Andrew would never think to ask about, but would mean everything to me. Michelle arrived Thursday night with her daughter Emma. We stayed up late going over the plan one more time, making sure every detail was perfect. "Are you sure about this, Mom?" Michelle asked around midnight, both of us slightly punchy from exhaustion and wine. "Because once you do this, there's no going back." "I'm sure. Your brother needs to learn that I'm not a problem to be solved. I'm a person who deserves respect. He's gonna be so pissed." "Good. Maybe he'll think twice before pulling something like this again." Friday morning dawned clear and cold. The closing was scheduled for 2 p.m. I dressed carefully, not too nice, not too casual, needed to look competent but not confrontational. Andrew arrived at my house at noon, unannounced but not unexpected. I'd known he'd try one last time to explain himself before the closing. I let him in, watched him pace my living room, preparing his arguments. "Mom, I know you're angry, but you need to understand." "I'm not angry, Andrew." "You're not?" "No." "I'm disappointed. There's a difference." And then I told him exactly what I thought of him, of his choice, of his complete disregard for my autonomy. I was calm, clear, and devastating. I watched him deflate with every word, watched him realize that he'd broken something between us that wouldn't be easily repaired. "The closing is in 2 hours, I said finally. "I'll be there. I'll sign the papers. I'll let you sell my home out from under me, since apparently that's your right as my power of attorney." "Mom, I'm doing this because I love you." "No, Andrew, you're doing this because it's easier to control me than to trust me. But that's about to change." "What do you mean?" I smiled. "You'll see. I'll meet you at the title company." He left looking confused and worried, exactly how I wanted him. Michelle, Emma, and I arrived at the title company at 1:55 p.m. Andrew was already there, along with Vanessa and the buyers, a young couple in their 30s with a toddler, looking excited and nervous. Jennifer Chen, the title officer, greeted us with visible relief. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm so glad you're here. Shall we get started?" "Actually," I said, settling into my chair with my purse on my lap, "there's something I need to say first." Everyone in the room turned to look at me. Andrew's face went pale. The young couple exchanged nervous glances. Jennifer Chen's professional smile faltered slightly. "Mrs. Morrison," she said carefully, "if there's a problem with the sale, we should discuss this privately before—" "There is no problem with the sale," I said. "I'm going to sign the papers. I'm going to let my son sell my home. But first, I want everyone in this room to understand exactly what's happening here." "Mom, this isn't the time," Andrew started. "When is the time, Andrew? You certainly didn't think it was important to discuss this with me 6 weeks ago when you listed my house, or 4 weeks ago when you accepted an offer, or any of the 42 days between then and now." Vanessa touched Andrew's arm. "Maybe we should step outside and let your mother—" "No," I said firmly. "Stay. You're part of this too. You all are." I turned to the young couple. "What are your names?" The woman spoke hesitantly. "I'm Sarah. This is my husband, Tom, and our daughter, Lily. Sarah and Tom, may I ask why you wanted to buy my house? They looked confused, but answered. It's beautiful, Sarah said. Perfect for raising a family. The backyard, the neighborhood, the schools, it's everything we've been looking for. I raised my children in that house. My son, Andrew, grew up in the bedroom at the top of the stairs. He used to slide down the banister even though I told him 100 times not to. He broke his arm falling out of the oak tree in the backyard when he was 9. Andrew's jaw tightened. Mom, what are you doing? I'm telling them about their new home. Isn't that what you wanted? For me to cooperate with the sale? I looked back at Sarah and Tom. My husband died in the master bedroom 5 years ago. I held his hand while he took his last breath. He'd lived in that house for 37 years, loved every inch of it, even the parts that needed fixing. Mrs. Morrison, Jennifer said gently, I understand this is emotional, but do you know why my son is selling my house? Not because I asked him to, not because I can't afford it or maintain it, but because he decided, without consulting me, that I'm too old to live independently. That's not true, Andrew said, his voice rising. I'm doing this for your safety. I'm 72 years old. I walk 3 miles every day. I volunteer at the library twice a week. I manage my own finances, cook my own meals, and maintain my own home. But my son has decided that's not good enough, that I need to be managed. Vanessa jumped in. Patricia, you're making this sound more sinister than it is. Andrew has been worried about you living alone in that big house. What if you fell? What if there was an emergency? What if I lived my life on my own terms instead of according to your worst-case scenarios? I shot back. I could fall in a condo. I could have an emergency in an assisted living facility. Being old doesn't mean I need to be warehoused for your convenience. That's not fair, Andrew said. I've been trying to take care of you. You've been trying to control me. There's a difference. I pulled a folder from my purse and set it on the table. I did some research this week about power of attorney, about elder abuse, about financial exploitation. Andrew's face went white. I am not financially exploiting you. Let me finish. I learned that adult children often use power of attorney to make decisions that benefit them, not their parents. And I started wondering, Andrew, where did you plan for me to live after you sold my home? He shifted uncomfortably. We talked about this. The assisted living community near our house, Grand Oaks. It's beautiful, has all the amenities. How much does Grand Oaks cost per month? That's not relevant. How much, Andrew? He sighed. $4,500 a month. And how much is my house selling for? Jennifer glanced at the papers. $475,000. I did the math out loud. So the proceeds from my home, the home I own free and clear, would pay for about 8.5 years at Grand Oaks. After that, I'd need to dip into my savings, my retirement accounts, my investments. Everything I had carefully managed would be drained paying for a facility I never agreed to live in. You need care, Mom. I need autonomy, Andrew. I need to be treated like an adult capable of making my own decisions. I turned back to the young couple. Sarah, Tom, I'm truly sorry you're caught in the middle of this. I'm sure you're lovely people who would take wonderful care of my home. Thank you, Sarah said uncertainly. We really do love it. I know, and under different circumstances, I'd be happy to sell it to you. But these aren't different circumstances. These are the circumstances where my son betrayed my trust and sold my home without my permission. You gave me power of attorney, Andrew said desperately. This is legal. You can't back out now. You're right. I can't stop this sale. You made sure of that. I opened my folder and pulled out several documents. Jennifer leaned forward. Mrs. Morrison, what are those? Documents I've had prepared over the last 3 days. The first is a revocation of Andrew's power of attorney, effective immediately after this closing. He'll never have that authority over me again. Andrew's face flushed. Mom, you're being unreasonable. The second is a new will, replacing the one where I'd left everything split equally between Andrew and Michelle. In this version, Andrew receives exactly $1 and a letter explaining why. Vanessa gasped. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. The third document is a statement I've prepared for anyone who asks why I changed my will. It details exactly what Andrew did. Selling my home without permission, using power of attorney to control my life, treating me like I'm incompetent. I plan to share this with everyone we know. You're trying to ruin my reputation, Andrew said, his voice shaking with anger. I'm telling the truth. If the truth ruins your reputation, that's on you. Michelle spoke up from behind me. I think what Mom is trying to say, Andrew, is that you massively overstepped, and there are consequences for that. Stay out of this, Michelle, Andrew snapped. This is between Mom and me. Actually, it involves all of us, because you called me 3 months ago asking if I thought Mom should sell the house. I said no. I said she was happy there, and we should respect her wishes. But you did it anyway. Andrew's mouth opened and closed. He'd been caught. You knew, I said quietly. You knew I wanted to stay, and you sold it anyway. Because you're not thinking clearly. You're holding on to that house because of Dad, because of memories. But it's not practical. You need... Don't tell me what I need. My voice rose for the first time. I'm your mother, not your child. I don't need you to manage my life or make my decisions. I need you to respect me. The room went silent. Even Lily, the toddler, had stopped squirming. Jennifer cleared her throat. Mr. Morrison, Mrs. Morrison, perhaps we should postpone the closing. Give everyone time to... No, I said firmly. We're going through with the sale. Everyone looked at me in surprise, Andrew most of all. You're going to sign? He asked. Yes, because unlike you, I keep my word. And because Sarah and Tom deserve their new home. They did nothing wrong. I looked at the young couple. I hope you'll be very happy there. I hope you make as many good memories as I did. Sarah's eyes were wet. Thank you. And I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. You're not the one who should be sorry. I signed the papers, every single one, dated them, initialed where Jennifer indicated, transferred ownership of my home to strangers. Andrew watched, confusion and relief warring on his face. He expected a fight, expected me to make a scene, refuse to sign, sabotage the sale. The fact that I was cooperating seemed to throw him off balance. See, Mom, he said as I signed the last page, this is for the best. You'll see. Grand Oaks is really beautiful, and you'll make friends, and I'm not going to Grand Oaks, I said calmly. What? We already put down a deposit. Your room is reserved for next month. Then you should get your deposit back, because I'm not going. Vanessa frowned. Patricia, where exactly do you plan to live? You just sold your house. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. That's the interesting part. You see, I did some thinking this week about where I wanted to live, and I realized I don't need a big house anymore. I don't need 2,400 square feet and a backyard and 3 bedrooms. Exactly, Andrew said, relaxing slightly. That's what I've been trying to tell you. But I do need independence, autonomy, a place that's mine, where no one can make decisions about my life without my permission. I pulled one more document from my folder. So I bought a condo. Andrew's face went blank. You what? I bought a condo. 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,200 square feet in that new building downtown, the one with the view of the river. I closed on it yesterday. How did you buy a condo in 3 days? I paid cash. Well, most of it. I took out a small mortgage for the rest, but at 72 with excellent credit and substantial assets, I was approved immediately. You don't have that kind of cash. Actually, I do. Robert left me very well provided for. I have investments, savings, his life insurance. I've been managing my money quite well without your help. I just never needed to spend it before. Vanessa was doing math in her head. But if you bought a condo, what are you going to do with the money from the house sale? I looked at her steadily. That's the best part. I'm giving it away. What? Andrew half rose from his chair. $475,000? I'm donating all of it. You can't. That's your money. It's my money and I can do whatever I want with it. I've already spoken to several charities, the Women's Shelter where I volunteer, the Library Foundation, the Scholarship Fund at Dad's high school. They're all getting substantial donations in Robert's name. Andrew looked like he might be sick. Mom, that's insane. You need that money for your future. My future is fine, Andrew. I have my retirement funds, my investments, my Social Security. I don't need this money, but those organizations do. And unlike putting it all into an assisted living facility I never wanted, this actually helps people. So you're just giving away almost $500,000 out of spite? Not spite, principle. You sold my house to control me, to force me into a living situation you chose. So I'm taking that control right back. I bought my own home, I'm donating the proceeds from the old one, and I'm doing it all without your permission, your input, or your approval. I stood up, gathering my papers. Sarah, Tom, the house is yours. I hope Lily loves the tire swing as much as Andrew did. Jennifer, thank you for your help. The signatures are all there. Mrs. Morrison, Jennifer said, looking somewhat odd, just to confirm, you're donating the entire proceeds from the sale? Every penny. The wire transfers are already arranged. As soon as the funds hit my account, they'll be distributed to the charities. Should be done by Monday. Andrew found his voice. This is crazy. You're making a huge mistake out of anger. No, sweetheart, you made the huge mistake. I'm just teaching you that actions have consequences. I picked up my purse. Michelle, Emma, are you ready to go? Absolutely, Michelle said, grinning. Where are you going? To my new condo, the one I own, where I'll be living independently, making my own decisions, managing my own life. You're welcome to visit after you apologize. Really apologize, not the kind where you say you're sorry but then explain why you were actually right. Mom, wait! Goodbye, Andrew. Enjoy explaining to Vanessa why you lost a $500,000 inheritance. I walked out of that title company with my head high and my daughter and granddaughter beside me. Behind me, I could hear Andrew arguing with Vanessa, Jennifer trying to finish the closing, Sarah and Tom's confused whispers. But I didn't look back. In the parking lot, Michelle hugged me tight. That was amazing, absolutely amazing. Was it too much? I asked, suddenly uncertain. The charity donations? Are you kidding? It was perfect. He wanted to control your money, so you gave it all away where it would actually help people. That's not revenge, Mom, that's justice. Emma, who'd been quiet through the whole proceeding, spoke up. Grandma, you really okay losing your house? I thought about it honestly. I'm sad. That house held a lot of memories. But honey, memories live in here. I touched my heart, not in walls and floors. And I'd rather lose the house than lose myself. Does that make sense? She nodded. You're kind of a badass, Grandma. Emma, Michelle said, but she was laughing. She is, Emma insisted. She totally destroyed Uncle Andrew in there. I smiled. I wouldn't say destroyed, more like educated. My phone rang. Andrew. I declined the call. It rang again. Declined. A text. Mom, please, we need to talk about this. I typed back, we'll talk when you're ready to treat me like an adult instead of a problem to solve. Another text. You can't just give away $500,000. Watch me. Michelle looked at my phone. He's gonna lose his mind. Good. Maybe it'll teach him something. We drove to my new condo, the one I had found and purchased in 72 hours of determined searching. It was beautiful. 10th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, modern kitchen, walk-in closets. Nothing like my old house, but that was the point. This was mine. Not because of a marriage or inheritance or decades of history. Mine because I chose it, bought it, would make new memories in it. The furniture I'd moved in was a mix of old and new. Robert's chair by the window, my mother's china in the built-in hutch, but also a new sofa, new bedding, new artwork. A blend of honoring the past and embracing the future. It's perfect, Mom, Michelle said, looking around. Really perfect. It is, isn't it? I sat in Robert's chair and looked out at the city lights beginning to twinkle as evening fell. I think I'm going to be happy here. My phone rang again. This time it was Vanessa. Patricia, you need to reconsider this charity donation. That's Andrew's inheritance, his children's future. Actually, Vanessa, it's my money, and I'm choosing to use it to help people instead of letting it sit in an account Andrew was already planning how to spend. He was going to use it for your care. I don't need care. I need respect. Something neither of you seem capable of giving. Let me ask you something. Did you know he was selling my house before I did? Silence. You did, didn't you? You were in on it from the beginning. We were trying to help you, she said defensively. You thought you knew better than me what I needed. You thought because I'm 72, I'm incompetent to make my own choices. Well, I just made a very big choice, $500,000 worth of choices, and there's nothing you can do about it. Andrew was devastated. Good. Maybe now he knows how I felt when I found out my own son sold my home without telling me. I hung up and turned off my phone. Michelle poured us both a glass of wine. We sat by the windows and watched the city below, the lives unfolding in the lit windows of other buildings, each one a story, each one filled with choices and consequences. Do you think he'll ever understand, Michelle asked, why you did this? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe he needs to lose something to understand what it feels like. I sipped my wine. Or maybe he'll just be angry forever. Either way, I've drawn my line. I won't be controlled. Not by my age, not by other people's fears, and definitely not by my own son. Good for you, Mom. Good for me. I agreed. But even as I said this, I knew this wasn't over. Andrew was stubborn. He wouldn't accept this quietly. And the real confrontation, the one where we'd either repair our relationship or shatter it completely, was still coming.
Andrew showed up at my new condo 3 days later. I'd just made coffee and was reading the newspaper. The actual physical newspaper, because I'm old-fashioned like that, when the doorman called up. Mrs. Morrison, you have a visitor. Andrew Morrison? He says he's your son. I thought about saying no, thought about having security turn him away, let him sit with his anger a while longer, but we needed to have this conversation eventually. Send him up. He looked terrible when I opened the door, unshaven, rumpled suit, circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. Part of me, the mother part that never quite shuts off, wanted to comfort him. The other part remembered why he looked that way. Mom, he said, can I come in? I stepped aside, let him enter my new space, watched him take in the modern design, the river view, the carefully chosen furniture. He stopped at Robert's chair by the window. You brought Dad's chair. Of course I did. It's my chair now. but it still smells like him if I sit in it long enough. Andrew touched the armrest, his fingers tracing the worn fabric. I thought you'd be lost without the house, without all the memories. I brought the memories with me, the ones that matter anyway. The rest are just rooms and walls. He turned to face me. I'm sorry. For which part? Selling my house without permission? Treating me like I'm senile? Planning my entire future without my impost? All of it. I'm sorry for all of it. I gestured to the sofa. Sit down, Andrew. We need to actually talk about this, not just exchange apologies that don't mean anything. He sat. I took the chair opposite him, the new one I'd bought for this condo. Comfortable, but firm, the kind that doesn't let you sink in and hide. Why? I asked simply. Why did you do it? I told you. I was worried about you, living alone in that big house. The truth, Andrew, not the explanation you've practiced for everyone else. The real reason. He was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because I'm terrified of losing you, the way we lost Dad. There it was, the truth beneath all the control and management. Explain, I said gently. Dad died in that house, in his own bed, and you were the only one there. Michelle was in Seattle. I was on a business trip that I'd put off twice but couldn't reschedule again. You called me when he was gone, and I had to sit in an airport terminal and cry because I wasn't there when my father died. Andrew! And then you stayed in that house, alone, in the same room where he died. And every time I visited, I'd walk past that room and imagine you in there, alone, maybe having a heart attack or a stroke or falling, and no one would know. No one would be there. Tears were streaming down his face now. My successful, controlled, always composed son falling apart in my living room. So you decided to sell my house to make yourself feel better about your fear. I decided to sell it to keep you safe, to make sure that when something happens to you, because something will happen eventually, Mom, that's just life, you won't be alone. You'll have people around, nurses, staff, help at the push of a button. Did you ever ask me what I'm afraid of? He looked up confused. What? You're so focused on your fear of me being alone, of me falling, of me dying, that you never asked about mine. Do you want to know what terrifies me, Andrew? What? Losing my independence, being treated like I'm incompetent, living in a facility where people make decisions for me, where I'm managed instead of consulted, where I'm a problem to be solved instead of a person to be respected. Grand Oaks isn't like that. Every facility is like that. Because the moment you enter one, you're admitting you can't take care of yourself. And I can, Andrew. I can still take care of myself. I'm 72, not 92. I have years left of being independent, and you tried to steal those from me.
I was trying to protect you. You were trying to control me. There's a difference, sweetheart. Protection involves asking what I want and helping me achieve it. Control is deciding what's best for me without my input. He slumped back against the sofa. Vanessa says I've ruined everything, that you're never going to forgive me, that I've lost my inheritance and your respect, and stop. I held up my hand. Let's talk about Vanessa for a moment. How much of this was her idea? Andrew's face flushed. What do you mean? I mean, did she perhaps mention that the house was worth a lot of money? That if you sold it and put me in assisted living, there would be substantial funds left over. Funds that would eventually come to you. That's not. She didn't. Andrew, I wasn't born yesterday. I saw the way she looked at that house every time she visited, the way she'd comment on how much equity you could access if I ever decided to sell. She wasn't subtle. Vanessa was concerned about your welfare. Vanessa was concerned about a $500,000 asset that wasn't being properly utilized. I used air quotes, something that made Andrew flinch. Be honest with yourself, if not with me. How much of this decision was about my safety and how much was about money? It wasn't about money. Then you won't mind that I donated it all. The silence that followed was heavy. Andrew's face went through a series of expressions: anger, frustration, resignation. Vanessa is furious. She'd been planning. We talked about using that money to buy a vacation house for the family. Somewhere you could visit, where we could all be together. Somewhere you could keep an eye on me, you mean? Maybe. I don't know anymore. I'm so confused, Mom. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was being a good son. You were being a scared son. And you let that fear and possibly your wife's greed override my clearly stated wishes to stay in my home. He put his head in his hands. I've messed up everything. Yes, you have. Can you ever forgive me? I thought about it carefully. I don't know, Andrew. I'm so angry at you right now, so hurt. You betrayed my trust in a fundamental way. You used legal documents I gave you in good faith to take control of my life. I know, God, I know. But I also understand that you did it out of fear, not malice. That doesn't excuse it, but it does explain it. He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. So there's a chance that we can fix this? Maybe, but not on your terms anymore. If we rebuild our relationship, it's going to be based on respect, real respect, not the lip service you've been paying while planning to override my decisions. Okay, whatever you need. I need you to accept that I'm an adult, capable of making my own choices, even if those choices seem risky to you, even if you think you know better. But Mom, what if something does happen? What if you fall or get sick? Or then I'll handle it. I have a medical alert system installed here. I have Michelle's number programmed into my phone. I have neighbors in this building, a doorman, the building manager. I'm not isolated, Andrew. I'm independent. There's a difference. It's not the same as having staff available 24/7. No, it's better because I'm living on my terms, not theirs. He shook his head. I still think you're being stubborn, and I think you're being controlling. So I guess we're at an impasse. Where do we go from here? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the river. I don't know. I meant what I said about the will, Andrew. Right now, you're getting $1 and a letter. If you want that to change, you need to prove to me that you see me as a person, not a problem. How do I do that? By respecting my decisions, by asking instead of assuming, by treating me like the adult I am instead of the invalid you're afraid I'll become. But Mom, what if something does happen? What if you fall or get sick? Or then I'll handle it. I have a medical alert system installed here. I have Michelle's number programmed into my phone. I have neighbors in this building, a doorman, the building manager. I'm not isolated, Andrew. I'm independent. There's a difference. It's not the same as having staff available 24/7. No, it's better because I'm living on my terms, not theirs. He shook his head. I still think you're being stubborn. And I think you're being controlling. So I guess we're at an impasse. Where do we go from here? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the river. I don't know. I meant what I said about the will, Andrew. Right now, you're getting $1 and a letter. If you want that to change, you need to prove to me that you see me as a person, not a problem. How do I do that? By respecting my decisions, by asking instead of assuming, by treating me like the adult I am instead of the invalid you're afraid I'll become. But Mom, what if something does happen?
What if you fall or get sick? Or then I'll handle it. I have a medical alert system installed here. I have Michelle's number programmed into my phone. I have neighbors in this building, a doorman, the building manager. I'm not isolated, Andrew. I'm independent. There's a difference. It's not the same as having staff available 24/7. No, it's better. Because I'm living on my terms, not theirs. He shook his head. I still think you're being stubborn, and I think you're being controlling. So I guess we're at an impasse. Where do we go from here?
I don't know. Before the closing, I didn't know how to bring it up. So you were going to spring it on me at the last minute when I'd have no time to process or plan or object? That's not protection, Andrew. That's manipulation. I'm not a manipulator. Then what do you call using power of attorney to make major decisions about someone else's life without their knowledge? What do you call selling someone's home and planning their future without consulting them? He stood up abruptly. I can't do this. I came here to apologize, to try to get things right, and you're punishing me. I'm holding you accountable. If that feels like punishment, maybe that says more about your actions than my response. Fine. Fine, you win, Mom. You got your revenge. You made me look like a terrible son. You donated money that could have helped your grandchildren. You've alienated Vanessa, and you're living in this condo out of spite. Congratulations. Out of spite. I felt my anger rising cold and sharp. I bought this condo because I needed a place to live after you sold my home. I donated that money because it was mine to do with as I pleased, and I chose to help people instead of funding a life I never agreed to. And I changed my will because you proved you don't respect me enough to be trusted with my legacy. Those charities didn't need that money. And you did? You, with your 6-figure salary and your big house and your private school tuition, you needed my money more than a women's shelter? More than a library foundation? More than scholarships for kids who can't afford college? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Because it sounds like you're mad that I gave away money you were already planning to spend. His face flushed dark red. Vanessa had plans. There it is. Vanessa had plans for my money. Not you wanting to take care of me. Not concern for my safety. Vanessa wanted a vacation house, and you were willing to sell my home and institutionalize me to get it for her. That's not fair. No, Andrew, what's not fair is that I trusted you. What's not fair is that I gave you power of attorney to protect me when something went wrong during surgery, and you used it to hijack my entire life. We stood there, both breathing hard, the argument hanging between us like smoke. My phone rang, breaking the tension. I glanced at it. Michelle. I need to take this. Andrew waved his hand dismissively. Of course, Michelle, the perfect child who never questions you. Michelle, the child who respects my autonomy, I corrected, answering the phone. Hi, honey. Mom, is Andrew there? His car's in the visitor parking. Yes, he's here. We're having a conversation. By conversation, do you mean screaming match? Because Mrs. Chen from 10C texted me that she could hear raised voices. I glanced at Andrew. It's gotten heated. Do you want me to come over? I'm just down the street. No, it's fine. We're, working through some things. Okay, but Mom, don't let him guilt you. What he did was wrong, period. No amount of good intentions changes that. I know, sweetheart. I'll call you later. After I hung up, Andrew said bitterly, let me guess. Michelle thinks I'm the worst son in the world? Michelle thinks you made a terrible choice, but she also understands that relationships are complicated and that I'm capable of deciding for myself what I want to do about it. Unlike you, who apparently thinks I'm incompetent. Your words, Andrew, not mine.
He walked to the door, then turned back. For what it's worth, I do see you, Mom. I see how strong you are, how independent, but I also see Dad's chair by the window, and I remember that he was strong and independent too, right until he wasn't. And I'm terrified of that moment for you, of the day when you're not okay and I'm not there, and it's too late. My anger softened slightly. I'm terrified of that too, sweetheart, but I'd rather live fully until that moment comes than spend years being managed out of fear of it. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can just watch and wait and hope you're okay. Then that's something you need to work on, because I'm not changing my life to accommodate your anxiety. He nodded slowly. I need some time to process all this, to figure out everything. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere, except away from the family, away from Sunday dinners and holidays. I never said I was avoiding family events, but Vanessa said, I don't care what Vanessa said. She's your wife, not your keeper, and I'm your mother, not her adversary. If she has an issue with how I spent my money, she can take it up with me directly instead of poisoning you against me. She's not. Andrew, go home. Talk to your wife. Think about what you really want. A relationship with your mother based on respect or control over someone you're afraid of losing, because you can't have both. He left without another word. I watched from my window as he crossed the parking lot to his car, his shoulders hunched, looking older than his 47 years. I felt drained, sad, but also clear. I'd drawn my boundaries. Now we'd see if Andrew could respect them. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed your son's peace of mind and your grandchildren's future out of stubbornness. When you're alone and need help, don't expect us to be there.
I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I screenshotted it and sent it to Michelle with the message. Exhibit A, why I'm not backing down. Her response was immediate. Holy, Mom, that's literally a threat. Save that message. You might need it. I would, because this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. 2 weeks passed before I heard from Andrew again. 2 weeks of settling into my new condo, of unpacking boxes and arranging furniture, and learning the rhythm of this different life. Michelle stayed for the first week, helping me organize, taking me to lunch, being the buffer I needed between my anger and my loneliness. Because I was lonely. I'd lived in that house on Maple Street for 37 years. I knew every neighbor, every crack in the sidewalk, every sound the house made at night. This condo was beautiful but anonymous. The neighbors nodded politely in the elevator, but didn't know my name. The sounds were different. Traffic instead of crickets. Footsteps above me instead of silence. The hum of the building instead of the settling of old wood. I missed my garden, missed the morning routine of walking out to check on the roses Robert had planted for our 20th anniversary, missed the birds that nested in the oak tree every spring. But I didn't regret my decision, because every time I walked into this condo, it was mine, chosen by me, bought by me, arranged according to my preferences. No one could take it from me or sell it without my knowledge. That security was worth the loss. The letters from the charities started arriving. Handwritten thank yous from the women's shelter director, a certificate of recognition from the Library Foundation, a phone call from the scholarship committee asking if they could name the program after Robert. Each one was a reminder that the money had gone where it mattered, where it would actually help people, instead of sitting in an account funding Andrew and Vanessa's vacation house dreams. I said yes to naming the scholarship after Robert. He would have liked that. His name helping kids get an education,
his legacy being something that built up instead of something that divided. Michelle went back to Seattle after that first week, but she called every day, sometimes twice, making sure I was eating, sleeping, not drowning in regret. "I'm okay," I told her on one of those calls. Surprisingly okay, actually. "You don't have to pretend with me, Mom." "I'm not pretending. Yes, I miss the house. Yes, I'm angry at Andrew. But I also wake up every morning and make my own choices about my day. That feels good in a way I didn't expect." "Have you heard from Andrew?" "No. Have you?" "He called once, asked if you thought I'd ever forgive him. I told him that was between you two, but that apologizing once and then waiting for things to blow over wasn't the same as actually changing." "What did he say?" "That you didn't understand the pressure he was under, that Vanessa was furious about the money, that he was caught between you and her, that everyone expected him to fix this but wouldn't tell him how." I sighed, still making himself the victim. "Yeah, I told him the pressure was entirely of his own making, that he created this situation by selling your house without permission. He didn't like that much." I imagine not. On a Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks after the closing, I got a call from the director of the women's shelter, Maria, a woman in her 50s who devoted her life to helping domestic violence survivors. "Patricia, do you have time for coffee? I'd love to thank you in person for the donation." We met at a cafe near my condo. Maria brought a folder full of plans, how they'd use the money to expand their facility, add beds, hire another counselor, create a children's play area. "You have no idea what this means," she said, her eyes bright with tears. "We've been trying to expand for 3 years. We turn away women every week because we're at capacity. Your donation means we can help so many more people." "I'm glad it's going to good use," I said. "Can I ask what inspired such a generous gift?" I thought about how to answer that. Finally settled on, "Someone tried to take my home from me. He meant well, but he didn't understand that home isn't just shelter. It's autonomy, it's safety, it's the right to make your own choices about your life." Maria's hand covered mine. "The women we serve understand that better than anyone." I know. That's why I wanted to help. We talked for over an hour. She told me about the shelter, the women and children they helped, the challenges they faced. Before I left, she asked if I'd consider volunteering. We can always use people to help with donations, organizing, even just being present. Some of our residents just need someone to talk to, someone who listens. So I'm asking now, what do you want, Mom? From your life? From our relationship? From the future? I sat down on the donated couch we kept in the sorting room. I want autonomy. I want to make my own choices, even when those choices seem risky to you. I want to be consulted about my life, not managed. Okay. I want you to trust that I'm capable of assessing my own needs and asking for help when I need it. That's harder for me. The trusting part. I know, but Andrew, that's your work to do, not mine. I can't live my life smaller to make your anxiety more manageable. The therapist said something similar, that I was trying to control external circumstances instead of managing my internal fear. Your therapist sounds smart. She is. He paused. Vanessa isn't happy about the money. I got her text. The one where she said not to expect help from you when I need it? She sent you that? He sounded genuinely shocked. Mom, I'm sorry. She was angry, but that was inappropriate. It was honest, at least. Better than smiling to my face while resenting me behind my back. She doesn't resent you. Andrew don't. We both know she's furious that I gave away money she considered hers, or at least hers by marriage. He was quiet. We had a lot of plans for that money. I know. And I'm not sorry I disrupted those plans. That money wasn't yours to plan around. I know that now. The therapist has been very clear about boundaries and enmeshment, and... He stopped. I'm working on it. On seeing you as a separate person with your own needs, not as an extension of me that I'm responsible for managing. That's good, Andrew. I'm glad you're working on it. Does that mean you'll consider changing the will back, or at least leaving me more than $1? There it was, the real reason for the call. No, I said simply. But I'm trying to change. And that's wonderful. But Andrew, the will isn't punishment. It's protection. Protection for me to make sure that if something happens to me, my wishes are respected. Right now, I don't trust you to respect my wishes. That's not fair. I'm in therapy, I'm working on myself. For 3 weeks? After 47 years of being a certain way. I'm glad you're making an effort, but effort isn't the same as change. Change takes time to prove itself. How much time? I don't know. Maybe a year? Maybe 5? Maybe never. I'll know it when I see it. So I'm supposed to be the good son and hope eventually you forgive me? No, you're supposed to be a respectful son because that's who you want to be, not because you're trying to get back into my will. He made a frustrated sound. You're being unreasonable. I'm being careful. There's a difference. Vanessa says you're just bitter and taking it out on me. Vanessa can think whatever she wants, but Andrew, let me be very clear. If you're calling to convince me to change my will, this conversation is over. If you're calling to actually work on our relationship without that as the goal, we can keep talking. I want to work on our relationship. Then stop mentioning the will. Fine. Fine, I won't mention it again. He took a breath. Can I see you? In person? I want to see where you're living, make sure you're okay. Why? So you can assess whether it's safe enough for your standards? No, because you're my mother, and I miss you. That got me. The simple honesty of it. Okay, you can visit. But Andrew, if you make one comment about how I should have chosen a ground floor unit, or criticize any aspect of my living situation, or suggest ways I could be safer, I will ask you to leave. Understood? Understood. He came over that Saturday, arrived with flowers, peonies, my favorites, and a nervousness I'd never seen him before. It's nice, he said, looking around the condo. Really nice, Mom. Great view. Thank you. He noticed the furniture, some from the old house, some new, stopped at Robert's chair by the window. I'm glad you brought this. It's good having a piece of Dad here. It helps. Some days I sit in it and talk to him, tell him my day. Does he answer? Not in words, but sometimes I know what he'd say. What would he say about all this? About what I did? I thought about it honestly. We had coffee, talked carefully about neutral things. His kids, my volunteer work at the shelter, a book I was reading. It was stilted, awkward, nothing like our conversations used to be. But it was something. As he was leaving, he turned back. I really am sorry, Mom. Not because of the money or the will, but because I hurt you. Because I made you feel like I didn't respect you. I do respect you. I let my fear override everything else. I know, sweetheart, and I appreciate you saying that. Can I come back? Next week, maybe? We could have dinner? We'll see how things go. One visit at a time. After he left, I felt exhausted, but also lighter. We weren't fixed. We might never be fully fixed, but we were talking, and that was a start. Michelle called that evening. How did it go with Andrew? Better than I expected, worse than I hoped. That sounds about right for you two. He's in therapy, says he's working on himself. Do you believe him? I believe he thinks he is. Whether that translates to actual change, we'll see. And the will? Stays as is for now. He asked about it, of course, but I held firm. Good for you, Mom. Over the following months, Andrew and I settled into a new pattern. He visited every few weeks, sometimes alone, occasionally with his kids, but never with Vanessa. We were polite, careful with each other, like diplomats negotiating a fragile peace. He stopped trying to manage my life, stopped suggesting safety modifications or questioning my choices. When I mentioned taking a watercolor class, he didn't point out that I'd have to drive at night. When I told him I was traveling to Seattle to visit Michelle, he didn't lecture me about airplane safety. It wasn't the easy, close relationship we'd had before, but it was honest in a way that relationship never had been. We were seeing each other clearly now. Me as someone who needed space to make mistakes, him as someone who struggled with fear and control. Was it enough? I didn't know yet. Some days I missed the old Andrew, the son who called just to chat, who showed up with groceries unasked, who felt like a friend instead of someone I had to keep at arm's length. But that Andrew had sold my house without permission. That Andrew had prioritized his comfort over my autonomy. And I wasn't sure I could ever fully trust him again. Maybe that was okay. Maybe some betrayals don't get fully healed. Maybe you just learn to live with the scar and adjust your expectations accordingly. The condo became home slowly. I joined a book club in the building, made friends with my neighbor 2 doors down, learned the names of the doormen. I planted herbs in pots on my balcony. Not the same as my garden, but something growing, something I could tend. I was building a new life. Not the one I'd planned, not the one I'd had, but mine nonetheless. Chosen, not imposed, independent, not managed. And on the days when I missed the old house, when I sat in Robert's chair and felt the weight of everything I lost, I reminded myself of what I'd gained. My autonomy, my self-respect, my right to make my own choices, even when those choices were hard. That was worth more than any house, more than any inheritance, more than the comfortable relationship I'd had with a son who didn't truly see me. I'd chosen myself, and I'd do it again. It's been 18 months since I signed those papers in the title company and walked away from the house on Maple Street. 18 months of living in this condo with the river view, of volunteering at the shelter, of building a life I chose rather than one that was chosen for me. Last week, I drove past my old house. I don't know why. Maybe masochism, maybe curiosity, maybe just because it was on the way to somewhere else. Sarah and Tom have done beautiful things with it. New shutters, a fresh coat of paint, a play structure in the backyard where the tire swing used to be. I could see little Lily through the window, dancing in what used to be my living room. It hurt less than I expected. The house looked happy, lived in, loved. It had moved on without me, just like I'd moved on without it. Andrew and I have found our way to something that resembles a relationship. He visits once a month now, always calling ahead, always respectful of my time and space. His kids came to Thanksgiving at my condo, the first family holiday we'd shared since everything fell apart. Vanessa didn't come, citing a headache, but I suspect we both preferred it that way. We don't talk about the money I donated or the will I changed. Those subjects are closed doors we've mutually agreed not to open. Instead, we talk about his work, my volunteer projects, the grandkids' activities. Surface things mostly. But sometimes, rarely, but sometimes we have moments of real connection. Moments where I see the boy who used to sit at my kitchen table doing homework, and he sees the mother who helped him, rather than the problem he tried to solve. Michelle says I'm being too easy on him, that 18 months of good behavior doesn't erase what he did. She might be right, but I'm 74 now, and I've learned that holding on to anger takes more energy than I want to spend. I haven't forgiven him completely. I'm not sure I ever will. But I've made peace with what happened, with who he is and who I am, and the limitations of our relationship now. Last month, I updated my will again. Not to restore Andrew's inheritance. That stays, as is, a reminder that actions have consequences. But I added provisions for my grandchildren's education, for continued donations to the charities I've been supporting. I want my legacy to be about helping people, about building up rather than tearing down. I've also created a living will and healthcare directive with very specific instructions. Michelle has the only copy. If something happens to me, if I become incapacitated or unable to make my own decisions, she's the one who decides, not Andrew. That bridge remains burned, and I'm okay with that. The volunteer work at the shelter has become the center of my new life. I go 3 times a week now, sometimes more. I've met women who've lost everything, homes, families, any sense of safety, and are rebuilding from nothing. They remind me that home isn't walls and floors. It's the right to make your own choices, the autonomy to determine your own path. One woman, Teresa, told me last week, "You gave up your house, but you kept yourself. That's the trait a lot of us wish we'd made sooner." She was right. I gave up the house on Maple Street. I gave up the easy relationship with Andrew. I gave up the comfortable fiction that my children would always see me as a capable adult. But I kept my autonomy, my dignity, my right to determine my own life.
Some people say what I did was excessive. that donating $500,000 out of spite was cutting off my nose to spite my face. But they don't understand. It wasn't spite. It was principle. It was drawing a line and saying, I will not be controlled, even by someone who loves me, especially by someone who loves me. Because love without respect isn't love at all. It's just another form of control. I'm 74 years old. I live alone in a condo I chose. I volunteer at a shelter helping women rebuild their lives. I take watercolor classes on Tuesday evenings, and book club meets Thursday afternoons. I have coffee with my neighbor Dorothy every Sunday morning. I call Michelle twice a week and visit Seattle once a quarter. It's not the life I planned. It's not the life I had, but it's mine. Entirely, completely, unapologetically mine. And when I sit in Robert's chair by the window watching the sunset over the river, I tell him about my days, about the women at the shelter finding their strength, about the art classes where my hands finally remember how to create, about the freedom of waking up each morning and deciding my own path. I think he'd be proud of me, not for the dramatic gesture of giving away the money. Robert was never one for grand gestures, but for standing my ground, for refusing to shrink into someone else's idea of what my life should be. That's what I want people to understand, especially women my age who feel invisible, who feel like their children are slowly taking over their lives for their own good. You don't have to accept it. You don't have to go quietly into whatever box someone else has built for you. Yes, we'll get older. Yes, someday we might need help. But needing help isn't the same as needing to be controlled. And giving someone power to help you doesn't mean giving them power to override your entire life. I hope Andrew has learned that. I hope the next time he's afraid for someone he loves, he asks them what they need instead of deciding for them. I hope he understands that protection means supporting someone's choices, not making choices for them. But even if he hasn't learned it, I have. I've learned that my autonomy is worth fighting for, that respect isn't negotiable, that some battles are worth having, even when they cost you everything you thought you couldn't live without. The sun is setting now, painting the river gold and pink. In a few minutes, I'll start dinner, just for me, exactly what I want, eaten at whatever time I choose. Later, I'll call Michelle and hear about my granddaughter's day. Maybe I'll read, or paint, or just sit in the quiet of my own company. Tomorrow, I'll volunteer at the shelter, help women who are learning the same lesson I learned, that you can lose everything and still have yourself. That starting over isn't failure. That choosing your own path, even when it's hard, is better than walking someone else's easy road. This is my life now, built from the ashes of what I lost, stronger for having burned and rebuilt. And I wouldn't change a single thing.